Welcome back to Reappraisal, where I take another look at the bottom 10 Doctor Who episodes as ranked by the 2014 Doctor Who magazine poll to see if they deserve being considered one of the show's worst. Next up is The Space Pirates. I'm not gonna lie, I've not been looking forward to doing this one and have put it off for a while. Partly because I had to rewatch this dull meandering story again at some point to make the video, but mainly because I had absolutely no idea what to say about it. Just think for a minute, has there ever been a criticism you've heard about The Space Pirates that wasn't it being so bloody boring? I just couldn't think of anything I could really add to the conversation. However, upon rewatch, I have actually managed to come up with a few talking points which I think explain why this episode falls completely flat. The first thing that always strikes me when watching The Space Pirates, of which I have horrifically subjected myself to 3 times now, is that there's nothing starkly wrong with it. Most of the worst Doctor Who episodes have loads of moments which you can point to and fully deconstruct as making it a stupid or unpleasant experience. But for me, The Space Pirates doesn't have any of those obvious moments. But I can't help but feel there must be something missing as the episode absolutely fails to hold the attention of even the most patient Doctor Who fans. I think I finally have my finger on what the issue is, and that is that it's a Doctor-like story. The TARDIS crew take an almost background role for the entire story, not even appearing in episode 1 for the first 15 minutes, and having pretty much no interactions with the villains of the story for the majority of the runtime. I don't know whether this was intentional, but Holmes has sidelined the show's main characters and put his in-universe characters in the spotlight, leaving the Doctor and co. in a much less proactive role than usual as they spend the story merely trying to escape rather than fully interacting with the plot. This almost reminds me of some of the Hartnell historicals in a way, as rather than taking a proactive role in the unfolding historical events, the TARDIS crew often try to get back to the TARDIS while just being tangled up in said events. The reason this worked was because when telling a historical story, you already have a very thick and interesting culture, political situation, and characters pre-made in real life. This means that while you lose the part of a Doctor Who story where the crew take a very proactive role in events, you instead replace it with showing the audience a different, rich culture with real-life detail to keep things interesting and engaging. The Space Pirates almost plays out like one of these historicals, with the crew merely getting tangled up in events while trying to escape. However, the difference is here, Holmes is drawing purely from his own imagination rather than from history, and this can pose an issue. To make a Doctor-like story with no focus on any recurring character's work and keep the audience interested, you need to do a good job at a number of things. First of all is making memorable characters that the audience care about. What carries most Doctor Who stories is audience investment in the Doctor and companions. Many episodes without the Doctor and co. would actually be pretty shallow without them if you think about it. If you're sidelining these characters for a whole story, you need to create some really standout new characters, and while there is clearly some effort put into characterisation, and I'd argue Milo Clancy is very memorable, it isn't enough to carry 6 episodes of drama on its own. The other very important thing you need to get right is the world building and plot. The world building is extremely limited, with references to a home planet and a frontier coming under Law and Order, but that's about all we get, which would be fine in other Doctor Who stories, but the way this one is written, it needs to rely on interesting details like you'd get in a fully fleshed out world, and this just doesn't have it. As for the plot, it's just a military ship trying to find a space pirate's base for practically the whole thing. There is a little intrigue and one decent-ish twist in episode 4, but again, it just isn't anywhere near enough. What makes most Doctor Who stories work is the audience's investment in the Doctor and his companions and the way they play off the various side characters' worlds and plots they come across. Take that aspect out of the spotlight, and it requires a monumental amount of effort as you need to fill the story rich with detail about the characters, the plot, and the world building, so that there's still a hook to keep the audience interested and invested. This story just doesn't do that enough, and at the end of the day, I just think the plot idea itself isn't enough to carry a 6-episode drama. I appreciate that something different was tried, but it just didn't work out at all, and this is why it's so boring to watch. In terms of Reappraisal, I certainly can't say it doesn't deserve its reputation as a terrible story. However, you could perhaps argue that this isn't offensively bad like other stories among Doctor Who's worst, and at the very least the episode did try something different. But I don't think that's a strong enough argument to sway me, as the whole thing falls flat for just about every Doctor Who fan. Maybe it not being a missing episode might help, but I'm extremely sceptical that it would turn general consensus around much, as in my opinion the fundamental flaw is in the way the script was written. The Space Pirate does not get a reappraisal, and is worthy of being considered one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time in another video.